Hello and welcome to another edition of City Beat. I'm Ann Erdman, the Public Information Officer for the City of Pasadena. I'm very pleased to have State Senator Carol Liu with us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You've been on here once before, but I think it's been 2 or 3 years.
I think so.
Perhaps.
At last time I was an assembly person.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Joe Pisecki, reporter with the Pasadena Weekly. Welcome, Joe.
Hi, thanks, Sam.
It's been a while. I know that you've been on the show before, but it's been the first time in a long time that you've been on since I've...
They only let me out of the office once in a while anymore.
Yes, I know. I hardly ever see Joe anymore. I have to do TV in order to see him. Senator Liu, I wanted to start by inviting you to tell us a little bit about your journey from community volunteer to California State Senator.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a fascinating trip. As you know, that I was on my local city council, elected in 1992, and I served 2 terms. Served as mayor twice. It's a rotation. And how I got there was through my community involvement. Folks came to me, took me out for lunch, and said, "Why don't you run for city council?" I said, "Well, I don't know anything about city council. I know more about schools," and that's what the press said to me. And but you know what? There's no mystery to public works or public safety, parks and rec, planning. So I learned a lot, and really enjoyed my time serving the people of La Cañada Flint Ridge. It is a volunteer job. When the seat opened up for the state assembly, when Jack Scott moved over to the state senate, education has been my passion for all my life. I'm a former school teacher, administrator, lots of other, volunteer in the schools, sat on various boards to help raise money for our public schools. And if you can remember back to the year 1999 or 2000, the state had a surplus. It had a substantial surplus of $8 billion, and I wanted to make sure that our public schools got that reinvestment because I had watched it deteriorate over the past 25 years. So that was the reason, and I figured, well, Sacramento is the place where they make the rules, so let's see if I can get there. And I won that election and served my 6 years on both the education committee all that time, and I chaired higher education. So the 6 years went by very quickly, and when Jack retired from the state senate seat, he was termed out, I decided, at this stage in my life, I could probably go off and do many other things, but yet there were lots of things undone, unfinished. So I ran last year, was reelected last November, and lo and behold, December, we don't usually go, you're elected in November, you get sworn in December, the 1st of December, and then you show up for work in January. But because of the deteriorating budget situation in the state of California, we went back in December for negotiations to try to get through the 08-09 budget of the current year. And that was finally resolved in February of this year. And it needs to be ratified by the people of California come next Tuesday.
And tell I want to go back to your journey real quickly before we get into budget issues.
Right.
But talk a little, if you will, about how well prepared city council service prepared you for state office, or did you have a lot of homework to do? How did you prepare yourself for going from La Cañada Flint Ridge at a municipal level to state of California level?
It's at least you know what a budget looks like. Because cities are mandated to have a balanced budget on a yearly basis, and so there's lots of give and take as to your own operation. So operations, and then how you want to involve the community, how you want to support the community, how you want to support the schools, and various sundry other public entities that you want to support to make the community a whole. I mean, at the local level, it's a very holistic opportunity to. And it's small enough that you can really make a difference, I mean, in people's lives. When you get to the state, it's not only more political in terms of parties, but the issues are so much grander. And you really need to, I mean, you can't be an expert at everything, so you have to pick and choose those things that you have passion about. And so that's why I sat on, or continue to sit on, education committees and try to get through all of the various ideas that people come to you about how to improve the system. So it is a challenge. Members have lots of ideas. The Education Committee has always been one of the most busy, the largest. It is, in fact, education is the only thing that is spelled out as a necessary service in our state constitution. So it is of the highest priority. Sometimes you feel like when you sit with your colleagues, maybe they've forgotten what the priority is, for all of us. But anyway, so we have done probably not our best, because there are certainly challenges, and it's always good to re-examine where you are and where you need to be. And public education today has many challenges.
And speaking of challenges, how have you been able to balance your life in Sacramento with your life here in this area?
The first, I'll share with you, the first term as a assembly person, it was more difficult. I guess just getting used to the schedule. People don't understand that my job is Monday through Thursday in Sacramento. So every Monday I hop on the bus, the Sky Bus, out at Burbank, and I fly up and spend Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday evenings and Thursday mornings generally. Yesterday was an afternoon also in Sacramento, and come home on Thursday afternoon, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And Friday, Saturday, Sundays are spent out in the district because your constituents expect you to show up at various events, do ribbon cuttings or smile, and be out and about with folks in the community. And I would say I was probably more manic about this when I was an assembly person, but the district was half the size too. So the district was smaller, much more compact. My Senate district today stretches from all of Pasadena, Temple City, San Gabriel, and 25% of it's in Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles. So we have Eagle Rock and parts of Highland Park and Chinatown and Los Feliz and Toluca Lake. And then I go way west out to Tampa Avenue, past the 405 freeway, and into Valley Village and Valley Glen and various small neighborhoods in Los Angeles, and come back around and cover Burbank and Glendale. And so it's absolutely huge. It's over 850,000 people. So people who used to see me in Pasadena don't see me as often because I am out in the west side of the district. So, I mean, that's where I spend my Fridays, Saturdays, and sometimes Sundays out there.
So how are you holding up?
I try to spend at least, devote some time to my husband. It's a good thing our kids are left the nest, so to speak, and my husband and my dogs are the obligation I have at home in La Cañada. So, and he's been very understanding, but we do try to date once a week.
It's good to have somebody to come home to.
It is good,
isn't
right?
it?
Yes, it is.
Well, Joe, I want to turn to you. Senator Liu mentioned challenges. She mentioned the state budget. There is a slate of California propositions that will be on the ballot as we tape this next Tuesday, and propositions 1A through 1F. There are some who have taken official positions of support in favor of 1A through 1F. And I'm talking about government organizations like the Pasadena City Council, as well as some media. Others have taken positions in opposition to 1A through 1F. I noticed that the Pasadena Weekly, when I was looking at it yesterday, came out with a position. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, actually, I'd love to. Well, in propositions 1A through 1F, and speaking with local politicians, listening to what the council had done, and speaking with our state senator as well, the newspaper came to the conclusion that that the position that many people are taking, that these propositions are necessary just essentially to keep the wheels on the bus, rings true. There's been some opposition to the far left saying, in the progressive opposition, saying perhaps we should hold out for a better deal, one that's more progressive, that doesn't carry so many cuts. And then on the right, you have people saying, we don't like this deal, and there is a suspicion, our paper suspected in our editorial, that of letting the state essentially go bankrupt in order to take a whole nother look at how government works and how government spending, especially on social safety net programs, occurs. The Weekly ended up recommending yes on 1A, 1B, 1C, and 1F. 1A and 1B, the two propositions that were, A being the rainy day fund, setting more funds aside, B, the restoration education, C, borrowing money from future lottery profits, F, the restriction on raises for people in Sacramento whenever there's the state is running a deficit. But we couldn't say yes to propositions D or E because we got the sense that not only were we talking in the other propositions about billions and billions of dollars, we were talking with D and E about hundreds of millions of dollars. Both I know are great amounts, especially on a reporter's salary when you think of it. Even 1 million is more than I'll ever touch. But we suggested that the state try to look at some other ways than to essentially attack with Proposition D, take money from First 5 programs that was guaranteed funding through the tobacco tax. With Proposition E, mental health that would steer Proposition 63 mental health monies away from mental health programs. And when you think about it, and this being a major issue in this election is this notion of being fiscally responsible, the Proposition 10 and Proposition 63 are the two propositions that are essentially self-funding propositions. They're already balanced budgets. They live within the means of the mechanism that was approved by taxpayers. So I understand that it was part of a deal with Democrat, Republican leadership and the governor, and these things were probably looked at because they haven't spent all their money already, like many other programs have. But we did suggest that the state take another look to see if they could do a little better than what's proposed in there, rather than try to balance the budget on the backs of, babies who are born into, poverty or other circumstances, and the mentally ill who have never really received the funding for programs to help them out since the Lanterman Act in the 1960s disbanded state hospitals.
You chair, as I understand it, the budget subcommittee of the Senate Education
No, I
Committee?
chair
No.
Human Services.
Human Services.
But I
okay.
sit on both education and the budget subcommittee on education.
Okay, but you don't chair the budget
No.
subcommittee. Oh, okay, all right. So,
Jack used to.
see, I'm confusing myself.
That's how Jack used to do both of those, and Gloria Romero does both of those now.
Okay, so as a member of the budget committee,
Right.
of the budget subcommittee of
Right.
the education committee, talk to us a little bit about what the discussions have been at that level. And I imagine you all have been rolling up your sleeves feverishly.
Well, yesterday, every Thursday afternoon, we've been having these budget subcommittee meetings together to talk about. It's very interesting. The budget is about this thick, and the education part maybe about this thick. And so we go over that through topics. We group them together, like higher education, or yesterday we were talking about the Commission on Student Aid and the private post-secondary commission. So we group them in topics, and then we talk about their budget almost by line as to what the state is obligated to pay, what it does, is it worthwhile, do we hold it open, or do we cut it? So we've been having those reviews of the education budget for the past 2.5 months, I would suggest, and we have left a lot of issues just open, depending upon the report about how much revenue there is, actual revenue there is, that should be announced today, May 15th, because taxes were due April 15th. It usually takes the folks who count the money a month to get it all straightened out. And the May, we'll call that the May revise. It should be out today. The governor preempted by yesterday in anticipation of the May revise. He presented his budget scenarios, his revision of his January budget, and he announced that yesterday. And he announced 2 budgets, one in response to the growing deficit that came out of the February deal, so to speak. And then the second budget is a reaction to voters denying the initiatives on the ballot next Tuesday. So he's already presented his budget. The legislature, after next Tuesday, will spend the next 2.5 weeks in what we call conference committee. And heretofore, those conference committees used to be between the leaderships of both parties and the governor, just 5 people. Well, my understanding is that we're going to open those up to the public, that public can come to us, because these are extraordinary times when the revenues are so short, to come to us and, not plead their case, but absolutely make their case, because we are facing a $15 billion shortfall, regardless of what happens next Tuesday. And if the initiatives do not pass, then we'll be facing a $21 billion shortfall. So we've already anticipate that there will be no additional revenues. So it just means cuts. We don't print our own money, so we have to do a prioritization about what is important for the state to move forward and fund those things that are important.
Joe, it sounds like you and others at the Weekly have been following this very closely and really have done your homework about this. There are a lot of people out there who want this all to be somebody's fault. Point the finger at one person or one boogeyman, and it's that person's fault. What is your sense, big picture-wise?
Well, I mean, obviously, with the economic change, revenues, there's less economy happening, so to speak, and so there's certainly less revenues for the state to operate on. Everybody, we get the sense out there that, people do really want someone to blame. They'll blame the legislature readily, but not their own legislator, not their own state senator, because, as we all know, it's like I think everybody in their districts, people like to blame blame it as sort of a large faceless entity, the legislature. I think the fact of the matter is there has been this reduction in revenues, and we're in one of a very few states where you need the super majority to pass a budget. You need a lot more people to agree than, say, in many other states. It takes, am I right, 50% and
plus one, right?
50%
majority.
Plus one, and here in California it takes two-thirds. Yes. So that's been one major problem in getting everybody, 2/3 of the government, to essentially agree on a budget. The other situation is no one is really open to any kind of, it appears no one is really open to any kind of revenue, that many revenue enhancements. We did have the package that the governor set out, but our tax structure is going to be what it is, and for the time being, and as well as our structure where you have requiring this 2/3 majority. So it's going to take a lot to hash it out. I think the propositions that are coming up are a big part of this, and depending on which way the vote goes, we're going to see. It's certainly interesting times.
It's an understatement.
Yes, it certainly is. You talked a little bit about the Budget Committee. Do you want to say anything about the Human Services Committee and what the work with that committee has been?
Well, I'm new to the Human Service Committee as of January, and I never paid much attention to IHSS or CalWorks or other kinds of issues that affect what this committee does. But we have been holding hearings on IHSS simply because it is the fastest growing program for the state. And it's a situation where the disabled and the it's a situation where it's a program where, to keep folks out of nursing homes, with the idea that these individual helpers would be hired to help people in need. I mean, we're talking about folks in wheelchairs who can't, manipulate themselves or need help with shopping and doing just typical chores. And every county has its own interpretation of IHSS, and but yet the state loosely configured, and it's run by the state, by the Department of Social Services, and the checks come through the state, but yet the individual person receiving the help is the employer, and they hire or fire the person that comes in to help them. So it's a system that needs to be looked at more carefully in terms of who's in charge and what the accountability is. And on the Senate side, the current pro tem Darrell Steinberg created a new committee last year, an oversight committee of to weigh in and review every program that the state runs to determine whether or not there are shortfalls or what we can do to improve them, et cetera. And so IHSS was one of the first ones on the, I was the guinea pig, so to speak, this particular program. And they went to 3 different counties and take a look at what they were talking about, how they were administering their program. And people are concerned about fraud and abuse of these people taking advantage of folks who are incapacitated, et cetera. And very little of fraud and abuse was discovered. However, as we'll circle back, it is a program that has expanded exponentially. And we need to make sure that we have this under control, because it's probably going to break the bank if we continue this effort here, because the population is getting older, there'll be more people that have needs, et cetera, and their income criteria and all this other kind of things to make sure that folks don't get in the program that don't need the program. But we need to look at it more carefully too.
And speaking of human service issues, I just want to give a nod to Joe real quickly, because you really have done several in-depth pieces in the Pasadena Weekly over time regarding homeless, regarding the foster care system, and really presented a human face to some of those issues.
Well, thank you.
And won awards for it.
Well, thank you. I mean, I don't know what to say about that, other than I just hope in covering these sorts of issues and putting a human face on things, that you can give people a real sense when you're talking about numbers on a budget, votes in a committee. It doesn't really hit home the same way as when you're about to write the editorial about the propositions, and on your way from the car to the office, you see 2 people who are arguing with invisible demons in their head on the way to work. So just as in personal experience, I mean, as a newspaper, in the more feature treatment stuff, we try to put a human face on the larger policy issues, to say, well, the choices we make, the votes that we make, and simply whether we pay attention does have an impact on people's lives. And just getting back to the budget for a second, Andre had a story this week where he found that the Pasadena Unified School District is facing something like $11 million, another enormous amount of cuts. It's unclear, because I think it's unclear how the stimulus money is going to break down. if Propositions A and B do not pass. So there are very real impacts to all of this stuff, to our kids, the people we see on the street. And as a newspaper, I guess part of the mission is to really bring that home to people, let people know why it matters, and usually requires a human face.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Well, you've done a fine job on those
thank you
articles. I
very
just wanted
much.
to give you kudos for that. I don't know if you've seen Joe's work in the Pasadena Weekly in the past with some of these major pieces that he's done, but
That's
it's
great,
been
yes.
really excellent
Right.
work. In our closing moments,
Okay.
our time is almost up. I want to give you an opportunity to let people know how to contact you or learn more about the work that you're doing. Is there a website?
Yes,
that
I
you
have it. I have a Senate website, and it's www.carolliu.ca.gov. Is that
Yeah,
what
I
is that
believe
has?
Or you can just Google Carol
I
Liu,
typically
L-I-U,
Google.
Just okay, all right.
California Senate, maybe.
California Senate, right? There's a government website, and I also maintain my own website too. So they can just Google my name, and both those things should come up.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. And Joe Pisecki, PasadenaWeekly.com.
That's right. The paper is online at PasadenaWeekly.com, and occasionally we'll throw a couple web exclusives on there with some breaking news. So it does well to check in once in a while. And if you need to reach me, you can email addresses in the paper and on the website, but it's joep@PasadenaWeekly.com.
Okay, and cityofpasadena.net, and click on City News for all the news that you need to see, including KPAS, and seeing this program repeating and other programs on 55 KPAS. I want to thank Senator Carol Liu for joining us. Joe Pisecki for Pasadena Weekly, thanks so much for being here. Join us another time on another edition of City Beat. Thanks for joining us.